Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel welcomes its first F-35 fighter jets. A new bill could ban mixed-gender prayer at the Western Wall, and you may want to watch what you eat this holiday season because you could end up in big trouble with the Israeli health minister. I'm Natasha Kirchak here with the latest news in Israel. Israel finally welcomed its new F-35 fighter jets last night after a series of disheartening delays, and President-elect Donald Trump even found a way to add some insult to the injury. The fifth-generation stealth fighter jets were supposed to arrive in the Jewish state yesterday afternoon with a special ceremony. But it looks like the revolutionary planes couldn't handle a bit of fog. Inclement weather and American safety regulations caused the jets to be grounded for hours in Cameri, Italy, leading the special jets to finally touch down in Israel at 8:16 p.m., a mere 6 hours late. The delay led half of the audience to leave the ceremony before the planes even landed, but at least the Israeli Prime Minister, President, and U.S. Secretary of Defense stuck around to give some celebratory speeches.
טייסי האדיר ומטוסי האדיר יוכלו לפעול בכל זירה, קרובה יותר וקרובה פחות. כמעט מדי יום אני נדרש לאשר משימות של הזרוע הארוכה של ישראל. וכל יום אני וכל אזרחי ישראל שמים את מבטחנו בכם, טייסי ישראל. ואני רוצה לומר היום לעם ישראל שהזרוע הארוכה הזאת נעשתה היום יותר ארוכה,
Israel is the first country to receive the F-35 jets outside of the United States. The plane's stealth capabilities allow it to both collect intelligence and attack up to 20 targets at once. Both Israeli and American officials agree that the F-35 is critical to maintaining Israel's military edge in the Middle East.
During my time as Secretary of Defense, I've traveled across this nation, from the northern border under threat from Hezbollah to Nevatim here in the south today. And during these visits, I've seen firsthand some of the threats you face daily from many different directions. That's one of the many reasons why the United States is committed to providing Israel with the most advanced military capables, critical not only to ensure Israel can defend itself, but also to maintain its qualitative military edge.
The 52-foot-long and 22-ton jets cost $100 million, which has been a target of criticism from U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. In fact, just as the Israeli ceremony to celebrate the new planes was about to begin, Trump took the time to aggressively tweet out, "The F-35 program and cost is out of control. Billions of dollars can and will be saved on military purchases after January 20th. Lockheed Martin has already invested large sums of money to reduce the price of the F-35 stealth fighter program, in response to criticism about the hefty costs.
Lockheed Martin and its industry partners understand the importance of affordability for the F-35 program. And since the beginning, we have invested hundreds of millions of dollars to reduce the price of the airplane, more than 70% from its original LRIPs. And we are projected to be at $85 million in the 2019 or the 2020 timeframe.
Despite the high cost, Israel is still looking forward to its newest military weapon. As the slated eviction of the Amona outpost rapidly approaches, the Israeli government is now calling on the residents to sign a pledge that there will be no violence. The requirement comes in exchange for the official approval of a relocation plan for the settlers, who have to leave their homes by December 25th. That date was set by the High Court after ruling the West Bank outpost was built illegally on privately owned Palestinian land. The written commitments are being sought to prevent any harm from coming to the nation's police and soldiers, who will oversee the evacuation. The government's also reportedly concerned that a violent eviction could possibly intensify into a deterioration of the security situation in the West Bank at large. A senior Israeli official who attended a meeting on the issue with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the Amona residents have to agree to leave peacefully no matter what. That means even if another petition against dismantlement is filed with the High Court, they also need to promise that outside activists won't be invited in to join efforts resisting the evacuation. And what happens if they refuse? According to the source, if the documents are signed, the whole relocation deal will be canceled. The regulatory system in the West Bank is responsible for all of the current dilemmas regarding Amona and other settlements slated to be dismantled. Jerusalem Post columnist Amos Asael told ILTV's Steve Leibowitz that it's a good thing that the Knesset is finally trying to tackle the issue.
I think that with the world currently being the international system, living in such deep perplexity as Trump's election has caused, and as political events in Europe are rapidly unfolding, what is happening right now between the Israeli government and the settlers of the West Bank is really marginal and to the outer world even esoteric. Having said this, there is a regulatory problem concerning the status of some of the West Bank settlements. The political controversy is well known. It is about Israelis being in disagreement over whether or not the West Bank could, in the foreseeable future, be a viable bargaining chip for a peace deal. But regardless of this political dilemma, there is a legal situation whereby even if you think that the West Bank should be settled by Israelis, many of the people on the right, most notably Benny Begin, who is the son of the fabled Menachem Begin and the most prominent lawmaker in Likud, he himself says settling the West Bank needs to be in a legally unquestionable way. And Amona is legally questionable. In fact, there is no question that it was mistakenly and perhaps innocently, but nevertheless clearly settled on Palestinian-owned land. So he and others like him from the right come and say this regulatory situation has to be straightened out. And I think that the government will have no choice but to address this. And I think this is where Netanyahu would like to have this entire saga end up. And I also predict that this is indeed where it will end up. The Supreme Court's ruling that Amona will need to be relocated will be respected, and whatever the far right pressures Likud into doing, ultimately there will be a formula that will at least be agreeable to people on the right like Benny Begin.
It was, last time Amona was evacuated back in 2006, it was a major violent confrontation, and it really set out the settlement movement on one side and the rule of law on the other. Do you expect that kind of confrontation? I mean, after all, right now, one of the people leading this current government is Naftali Bennett from Habayit Yehudi, who's a leader, a hero of the settlement movement, and is supposed to be representing them. If there's a clash, could that actually disrupt the government in the country?
I think that the situation is different now from 2006 because the prime minister back then was Ehud Olmert. It was the beginning of his 3-year premiership, and it came on the heels of his vow to unilaterally retreat from the West Bank. A quest that he never got to fulfill because of the lack of Palestinian cooperation. But this is where he was more than willing to go. He was in fact eager to go there. And this, I think, is what the people back then demonstrating in Amona really were out to prevent. It was about much more than just Amona. Right now, from their viewpoint, there is no such broader context at stake. The prime minister is Netanyahu. The international arena is in an entirely different location. The Middle East is in an entirely different situation. It's not an analogy.
There's about to be another showdown over Jerusalem's Western Wall, and this time it's not because of invading armies or UNESCO resolutions, but about who has the right to pray there and how. Since Israel regained control of the holy site in 1967, there's been designated spaces for men and women to worship, according to Orthodox rules. Those who want to stand together have done so in another area nearby for nearly 30 years. But that practice was disputed until Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu helped negotiate a plan, approved by the government last January. The plan was never carried out, and the High Court ordered the government to explain why by December 18th. Now, 16 Knesset members from the ruling coalition just submitted a bill to prevent any kind of mixed prayer at the wall. Women would also be banned from wearing any items traditionally worn by men, like prayer shawls. Plus, offenders would be punished with up to 6 months in jail and possible fines of around $2,600. While the Prime Minister hasn't yet commented on the bill, the envoy he's appointed to resolve the dispute has. Jewish Agency Chairman Natan Sharansky is warning that if passed, the law could have grave consequences on Israel's relations with diaspora Jewry. He's also slamming it for making a mockery of the government's previous efforts to ensure that the Western Wall is a place that unites rather than divides the Jewish people. When we're not feeling well and we take a medication that we think fits our symptoms without consulting a doctor, we're taking a risk. These risks are infinitely higher when the diagnosis is cancer, and the very same life-saving drugs you're prescribed could really do harm. Joining me in the studio today is Professor Avi Schroeder from the Technion Israel Institute of Technology to tell us about a new innovation that might solve these issues. Thanks so much for coming in.
Hi, Natasha. Thanks so much for having me here today.
So let's begin. Tell us about this new innovation that you guys are offering.
So it actually started as a problem we noticed in the clinic. Many patients that have cancer come to their physicians and they're diagnosed with cancer, and then a medicine needs to be prescribed for these patients. And it's actually a really hard task to try and define which medicine will be best for each cancer patient. In fact, when we look at the statistics, nearly 30% or even higher of patients are prescribed a wrong medication, a medicine that doesn't work.
So what have you guys created to combat this issue?
So our approach was to use nanotechnology to try and pre-screen ahead of time, before treatment actually begins, which medicine will be best for each patient.
Wow. Now, what types of cancers have you diagnosed with this system? What types of illnesses?
Yeah, so the first cancer we went for is called triple-negative breast cancer. It's a subset of breast cancer, or a subtype of breast cancer, which 20% of breast cancer patients actually suffer of. And there, the clinical tools are actually more limited. There are less medicines for treating triple-negative breast cancer, and that's why we thought that's a great place to begin, where the clinic needs very much a technology that can help determine or personalize cancer care.
Now, tell us how you guys actually do this. I mean, what is some of the data? How accurate is this system that you've created?
So what we created is, the analogy would be an allergy test. In an allergy test, we inject minuscule amounts of different allergens underneath the skin and then try to figure out what we're sensitive to. Here what we did is we used minuscule amounts of anti-cancer medicines. We loaded them into nanoparticles and then had them injected into the blood and target the tumor site. Inside the tumor, these nanoparticles actually reach the different cells of the tumor and dispatch their medicines. And our technology kicks in here. We can actually identify which medicine worked inside the patient's cells and which did not work. But we're using very, very low doses, meaning it's not a treatment, it's actually a diagnostic.
So the way that it works is, okay, you go to the doctor, you're diagnosed with this specific type of cancer, and then you do these tests to be able to identify what medicine would work best for the patient?
Absolutely.
Okay.
When we look at the data, many times a physician will treat with a medicine they were sure or not sure would work for this specific patient. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
What we want to provide the physicians with is information before they start treating. This medicine works best in your patient, but running it as a very, very safe trial before beginning treatment.
Now, you said that you work specifically with patients of this breast cancer, but are there other cancers that your system can apply to?
So that's wonderful. We're starting with breast cancer. We surely want to expand to additional types of cancer, such as ovarian cancer, melanoma, and other types of cancer where we believe our technology can really help advance the way the clinic actually treats our patients.
So it seems like you're on the right path. Now, what do you do if, hypothetically, this system misdiagnoses or overprescribes something?
So that's a wonderful question. The worst we can go is give the medicine that the patient we think to give without the trial. So we're not giving medicines or not testing medicines which would not be used in this type of cancer. We're screening within the set of medicines that are used today, which would be best. So worst we can do is be at the state of the art today. And the best we can do is actually improve way beyond the state of the art by tuning the medicine or tailoring the treatment directly for this specific patient.
So now the big question is, when and where will this technology be available to patients in need?
Natasha, thanks so much for asking that. And the technology, the platform is actually, we have it. It's in the lab. It's ready. What we need to do now is transform it to the clinic. And this is where we need help also from the regulatory bodies who understand that this technology actually is a transformation of the way we treat cancer today, but also from the patients themselves. Today, most governments actually listen very closely to what the patients say. And when patients demand that a technology come faster, reach the clinic in a faster manner, all the bureaucracy that's around it, which is important bureaucracy, but actually can move much, much faster. We've seen it in the past, and I believe also here we need to work hand in hand with the patients, with the caregivers, and with the regulatory bodies so this technology, which is important, we believe, will reach the clinic in the fastest manner.
Well, I guess we just have to hope for the best, and it seems like you guys have created something that has the potential to save millions of lives. So we'll just see when it's available and hope that time is soon, right?
We hope so too. We're
Great.
doing our best, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks so much for having me, Natasha.
All right, guys, speaking of staying healthy or not staying healthy, Hanukkah is coming up, and here in Israel, lots of mouths are already watering in anticipation of eating the jelly donuts that have become part of the celebration. Well, the sugary snacks may not be as enjoyable this year because the country's health minister just cast a few shadows on the holiday. Aaron, why are they trying to take away our donuts?
Thankfully, I don't think anybody's trying to do that to us. But, recently we've had some really troubling reports come out about the health in this country, and I think the health ministry is really just trying to get ahead of it.
Health Minister Yaakov Litzman is urging the public to consume fewer of the sugary, jelly-filled donuts known as sufganiyot as part of the ministry's overall crackdown on unhealthy foods and campaign to promote preventative measures aimed at curbing sickness. According to a recent OECD report, Israel is already per capita the world's largest consumer of sugar. The report says that Israelis have an average intake of 170 grams of sugar each day. The United States, for perspective, is in fourth place, consuming 142 grams daily. In efforts to reduce the trend, the health minister has already come out against the amount of junk food Israelis like to scarf down, especially targeting fast food restaurants like McDonald's. In fact, he took the junk food company's reactions to his actions as proof of his cause being correct.
I will not step down. I think it's the right direction. How do I know that I am succeeding? Two things. First of all, I hear them screaming, the companies. So it seems to me that it's going down the sales of the junk food. I know that citizens, people, private people, are all with me. People want to see that we should take this down and make it a more healthy system.
It's not yet known what the health minister thinks about the announcement from the Israeli branch of Burger King, which decided to serve up its Whoppers on a variation of the donut this Hanukkah. Well, we'll have to wait and see how many people are going to be able to stave off the temptations of sugary selections and opt instead for healthier and more nutritional alternatives. Keep in mind, though, that the ultra-Orthodox minister is fully aware of just how hard it can be to abandon tradition, so he says it's okay to eat a few sufganiot, but to do your best to find the ones that aren't completely drenched in oil and sweets.
Turkey's new ambassador is being warmly received by the Jewish state in yet another step towards the restoration of diplomatic ties between the once close allies. Israeli President Reuven Rivlin greeted Turkish Ambassador Kemal Oke during the formal presentation of his credentials at the president's residence in Jerusalem. Okem is the first Turkish envoy to Israel since relations broke off between the two nations over the Mavi Marmara incident 6 years ago. 10 Turkish pro-Palestinian activists were killed in 2010 after they violently attacked Israeli security forces trying to stop them from breaching the naval blockade on Gaza. But Jerusalem and Ankara negotiated a settlement to the dispute and agreed to normalize ties this past June.
Our friendship goes back in history. And I hope that the reconciliation and the appointment of new ambassadors will open a new and promising page in this relationship. We must work together to promote our economic relation, trade, and energy cooperation as a real engine of growth for our friendship.
Okem is being described as quite enthusiastic to take up his new post, which marks the opening of a fresh start for both countries.
Indeed, Mr. President, this is a new beginning in our bilateral relations and in our efforts, joint efforts in this region, which we have close ties, historical ties. Our region offers more than its share of challenges, but also of big opportunities. As before, Turkey and Israel will work together to make sure that these opportunities are fully utilized and challenges are met.
He's also expressing his hope Israel's newly repaired relationship with Turkey will positively impact other regional players.
It is hoped that this cooperation will also work for the benefit of other nations, particularly to the Palestinian Authority as well. I thank for the cooperation extended by the Israeli authorities for the Turkish aid toward Gaza and the Palestinian areas.
Israel's ambassador to Turkey, Eitan Naeh, was dispatched to Ankara a week ago, and now that the rapprochement is well underway, Israel and Turkey can start working on mutual strategies to overcome rising security risks, such as Islamist terrorism raging in the Middle East. They're also setting their sights on developing lucrative Mediterranean gas deals that will greatly benefit both nations. The horrific pandemic of AIDS is estimated to have caused the painful deaths of at least 40 million people around the world. But today, Israel has great news for at least 37 million others who are living with HIV and are in daily fear of their lives. Clinical trials of a new therapy are about to get underway to test a new Israeli medication that successfully wiped out 97% of the HIV virus in laboratory samples. It took just 8 days for the experimental drug called Amona to kill infected cells in blood taken from patients at Israel's largest AIDS clinic. Now, wider studies targeting 12 different types of cancer are being held at 3 Israeli medical centers. The newly developed drug will be given for the first time to real patients who were selected on compassionate grounds. Until now, anti-AIDS drugs have only been able to curb the growth of the virus, but are unable to completely eliminate it like the Israeli treatment. And Amona has another incredible feature in that it only impacts infected cells and not the healthy ones, meaning there won't be any of the extreme side effects caused by the existing drugs. The therapy is a collaboration between a professor at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem who discovered the active ingredient and the Zion pharmaceutical company which develops it. This revolutionary Israeli medication could be just what we've all been waiting for to save millions of lives and reduce immeasurable suffering around the world. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Sometimes you have to let life turn you upside down so you can learn how to live right side up. So today's word is hafuch, which means upside down or reversed. Hafuch has many similar meanings in English, like inverted or on the contrary, but its most popular use in the Holy Land has to do with coffee. If you want to order a cappuccino or latte in Israel, just ask for a café hafuch or upside down coffee. Upside down coffee is a lot more delicious than it sounds. Steamed milk is first poured into the coffee mug, and then espresso is poured gently afterwards, making it just as delicious to look at. If you're not in the mood for caffeine though, all you need to do is spend a day watching the news in the Middle East. You'll probably end up going home and thinking Aolam hafuch, or the world is upside down. The good news is that even when you feel hafuch, perhaps being upside down will help you find answers too. After all, it's always a good idea to get a new perspective. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
Tonight should be rainy and cold with a chance of flooding and a low of 55 or 13 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect more of the same, but with an additional drop in temperatures to a high of 60 or 16 degrees Celsius. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.81 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching and see you tonight.